What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the Thermo Diet podcast. We're pretty stoked. I'm here with the Research Cowboy himself.
How's
Jayton.
it going?
What's up? So, for those people who don't know, Jayton is our head of research here at UMZU, and an integral part of running the Thermo Diet group and the Thermo Diet course. And a lot of what you've read in the Thermo Diet course is thanks to Jayton as well. So, we've decided to run this podcast together and talk about thermo, not just the Thermo Diet, but thermo in all aspects. But a lot of what we're going to be talking about, especially in the beginning, is the diet itself. And one thing that people notice as they get deeper into doing the Thermo Diet is that it really becomes a lifestyle. It becomes a way of living. And you notice that it's just like almost a mindset and a habit pattern. And eventually it goes beyond just nutrition and turns into just the way you eat, the way you live. And it's a pretty fun way to be.
So what's your elevator pitch for thermo?
Yeah, so thermo in a nutshell, especially for those of you who are new to thermo in a nutshell, the Thermo Diet is basically a way of eating that optimizes the energy flow through your body. And you do that by making sure that you get rid of blockers and you introduce activators. And that's a simple way to think about this. When kind of thinking through the design of this philosophy itself, that was the easiest way to come up with stuff, because when you think about it, everything that you do or eat or whatever either brings you toward a better state of health, or away from the state of health. So thermo itself is defined as the perfect ideal state of health. And if you think about it, you're as close to thermo as you're ever going to be when you're born, barring some sort of birth defect or some sort of prenatal issues. But the idea is to bring ourselves back to that state of health where we had a ton of energy every day, where we had a clear mind, just full of imagination and creativity. We didn't have brain fog. Back when we had incredible skin, back when we could just kind of go for days, and you, before you have any sort of digestion issues, before you have any sort of really these issues that people associate with aging. So the Thermo Diet is a way of eating that brings you back to that state of health. It brings you back in that direction. And we achieve this through namely hormonal optimization, and even deeper than that through overcoming micronutrient deficiencies, because that in the around 10 years of research I've been doing into this stuff, the micronutrient deficiencies I've found have been the number one blocker, essentially, of having better health. And it seems so stupidly simple that most people brush it off, but it's really, really true. I mean, there are so many studies demonstrating just simple deficiencies, like whether it's a vitamin deficiency or a mineral deficiency or an amino acid deficiency, that causes a massive imbalance in the body. And it makes total sense. It's completely logical, because these are the raw materials that your body uses to fuel every hormonal and metabolic process, to facilitate the health of every major gland in your body that serves as kind of a fulcrum or a crux to these certain systems. And they're all interconnected. The body is just one big system. So when you start to become deficient in something, for example, zinc or magnesium or vitamin B, B3 or B6 or B12 or whatever, it naturally just throws off the complete balance of that system. And what your body does is it's going to compensate for that lack by grabbing that resource from another area of the body. And what that ends up doing over years and years, usually it takes decades for these things to manifest, it turns into signs of aging that people have, and disease, and these issues that people really start to experience when they're in their 30s and 40s and 50s. But these deficiencies have been happening since their childhood. It's just that you were in such a good state of health as a kid or a teenager that you can typically overcome them. Some people start to show the signs of these problems and imbalances early on in life, when they're a teenager. I mean, some people actually they'll get gray hair when they're in their late teens. They'll start to have low T problems in their teens. They'll start to lose hair when they're in their teens and early 20s. So these signs start to show up earlier for some people than others. But for the most part, it shows up, later in life. And then people start to freak out. And so our intention is to provide good information, good education, and good advice and products that you can use to overcome these issues and kind of turn back the clock, so to speak.
So what was like the foundational idea in your head whenever you began to start thinking about thermal principles?
It kind of was born out of my own issues. So a lot of people know my story, but if you don't, so when I was 19, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor in my pituitary gland, caused all sorts of issues, namely hormonal issues. And I became fixated on testosterone and because my testosterone was so low. And I was a dude, I was 19 years old, and so I became obsessed with that, figured out how to naturally balance my hormones and get my testosterone back up really high without using drugs and, with no surgeries, no medications or anything, just using good, simple nutrition and so forth. And over the years, the philosophy that was developed then through all that self-experimentation and then writing a few versions of this, updating a book and building kind of a following on testosterone, I started to realize that these patterns were just not just for guys, and it wasn't just for testosterone. There ended up being really a lot of signs that so many people were having issues with their hormones in general that, and then it became obvious to me that the micronutrient deficiencies were like one of the major drivers and kind of the foundational element to everything, that I wanted to step back and think about something, develop a philosophy that could help men and women and not just deal with testosterone, but deal with all sorts of issues, just like health in general. And that's where this whole thing was born out of. And so far, I mean, the community that's been around Thermo has just been incredible. And we have some amazing testimonials and success stories already of people just completely turning their health around in a relatively short period of time. Even if it takes a long period of time for you to ruin your health, a lot of people take decades to ruin their health. So you can't really expect like a 30 or 90 day complete turnaround, but you can get on the path back to that thermo state of health. And some people do it in as little as 6 months. They have just like radical changes in the way that their health is. So it's been so far so good, and that's why we're doing this podcast, because we want to share with you all of what we know about this and just kind of bring you along on the journey, because it really is a progression even for us in terms of understanding, because the body's just this constant puzzle that needs to be solved. And I think we're on the good path to doing that.
Definitely. So what are some of the best benefits of Thermo that you experience?
First and foremost, probably just energy throughout the day. And that's by design. I mean, the basic foundation of Thermo is to facilitate energy flow through the body. So if you can fuel the cell properly, then it starts to fuel everything else. And the energy flow kind of goes all the way up to the organism through like tissues, organs, organ systems, and then ultimately the organism becomes more ordered and balanced. So what you find is by introducing these activators and overcoming blockers like these deficiencies, the energy flow through the body becomes so pronounced that you just feel incredible all day. You don't have any crashes. You just feel good. Another thing that people notice is that cravings disappear, which is that was an interesting one when I kind of saw that happening. And it could happen as little as 2 weeks. A lot of people through their whole life deal with cravings, and cravings are interesting because I think they're just signs of a deficiency. I really believe in the law of compensation, like a pendulum swinging. Like if you become very deficient in something or multiple things, your body's naturally going to start to crave it to compensate for that lack. Or it's going to crave something else that is somehow correlated with that deficiency. And our level of understanding is starting to increase about that. So I believe in that pendulum because a lot of people are just so deficient, they swing to one side and eventually you're going to swing back to the other. The cravings disappearing is interesting because everything on Thermo, everything that we recommend with the Thermo diet and the nutrition there, it is easy to digest. Facilitates better gut health in general with a lot of prebiotic fiber and probiotics. along with the nutrient richness of the food, which is able to be digested as your gut improves. I think that is the culprit of like why your cravings just disappear. You know how easy it is to regain a good physique and lose fat when those cravings are gone, because I think probably one of the biggest issues that people have when they're trying to lose body fat in general or just get in better shape is just cravings, because it throws them off course. Like if you crave something heavily, it's very hard for people to use willpower to overcome that. But it's interesting because when the craving disappears, you just don't want it at all. Like it doesn't even cross your mind to want anything else. And it's funny because it really does take just a couple weeks. For some people, it might take longer, just depending on your level of deficiency. But the cravings do disappear. And that's what we call the thermo effortless zone, where it just kind of becomes like a way of life. It's very effortless. You don't feel like it's a diet per se, in the way that most people think about diets as like a short-term fix. It just turns into this is how I eat. And that's a big one. Another one is people sleep better. Sleep problems are huge, major. So when your sleep balance gets restored and you can sleep a solid 8 hours a night without any problems, you don't wake up, maybe wake up once to go to the bathroom or something, but you just have a normal night's sleep. That is a major impact on people's lives, because like, think back to any time you've had just a bad night's sleep. The next day is just terrible. So imagine, I know a lot of people just have that every night. That goes away over time.
Yeah, I noticed whenever I adopted the philosophy, like I'd be waking up at night 2 or 3 times to go to the bathroom, never had a good night to sleep. And then I finally began to restore my body's, not only the deficiency, but just the amount of energy that I had and that I was producing. And because of that, I don't even wake up at night anymore, like
Nice.
at all. I sleep completely through the night.
Yeah, and a big aspect of sleep too is obviously there's some herbs that we recommend using, but I think one of the biggest levers is a couple amino acids that are pretty, in pretty high quantities when you eat thermo, namely glycine. When you're consuming a lot of glycine, it really relaxes your body and helps you to fall asleep more easily. And there's research showing that glycine can help trigger the growth hormone during sleep. And it's like everything in the body, it's a feedback loop. So when you start to introduce the right activators in this sense, over time, your body starts to feed back the right information, and it becomes a lot easier to get into the habit of just sleeping through the night and feeling rested when you wake up.
Yeah, that's one reason that I like drinking bone broth before bed too, is because it's really high in that glycine.
Yeah.
And the glycine's an inhibitory neurotransmitter, isn't it? Like it slows down the firing of the nervous system, so you can actually relax and fall into sleep a lot easier.
Yeah, it helps with GABA.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's great. It's good for your thyroid. It helps fuel your metabolism. So those are probably the biggest things I've noticed. Recap again, energy, sleep, and cravings disappear. And when all those things, those are just kind of foundational, and those things fall into place, it becomes extremely easy to achieve your health goals, whether it's getting in better shape or just feeling better in general. So it becomes a natural way of being for most people.
Yeah, I noticed that my digestion got a lot better too. So a lot of people will go 2 days without going to the bathroom and not even think anything's wrong. You should be going at least once a day.
Yeah.
At least once a day.
Yep.
And I also noticed that like a lot of people don't realize that they might think that they feel good, and that might be their baseline currently, but if they can elevate their health just a little bit more, that baseline becomes higher, and your awareness and the amount that you feel and actually experience is a lot better.
Yeah, it goes back to like you don't know what you don't know,
Right.
but then when you're shown something else, you're like, wow, this is what life could be like. It's almost like eating a magic mushroom
Yeah.
for the first time, and you're like, whoa, I never saw this stuff that was always right in front of me the whole time, but I know it's right there. You can see colors more clearly and kind of have a better awareness of your surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost what it's analogous to what thermo is. Once you start to feel better in your health, You're like, wow, I've never felt like this before. At least not that I could remember. But now this is my new normal.
Yeah. And you actually begin to like, you're in tune with your body a lot better too.
Yeah.
Like you can actually feel what your body's telling you in a lot of cases.
Yeah, you start to pay attention to things that you wouldn't have before. Just back to what you were just talking about, the digestion thing. A lot of people just have bad digestion their whole life. And they just think like, this is the way I am. I remember, growing up, I had a lot of digestive issues. A couple people in my family also did. But we always just were saying, like, before I knew anything about nutrition, it was just like, oh, it's just how it's always been, how it'll always be. You don't even think about the fact that it's all completely due to the foods that you're putting in your body and then issues that causes over time. So when you start to change the way that you're eating, start to moderate your stress levels better, your digestion starts to improve, and you start to realize, like, wow, my body actually isn't just like that. It's not some fatalistic thing or some genetic hereditary issue. It's just I was just putting the wrong things in my body before, and now I'm feeding it the right stuff, and it's starting to heal itself. And I think that's one of the big things I want to talk about with Thermo too, is that you got to recognize that your body is a self-healing organism. When it's sick, you're in your own way. You have to get out of your own way. You're exposing your body to something that's making it ill. Stop exposing it. Figure out what's causing the issue and stop exposing it to that. And that's kind of the definition of a blocker. Just getting rid of blockers as you become aware of them, and as you can habitually like kind of take them out of your life, and then your body starts to it'll heal itself when you get out of its way.
So blockers are the things that stop the energy flow through the body. Activators are things that allow it to work better.
Yeah.
Sweet. So what are some tips that people can start going Thermo with?
Well, first off, some easy ones. Obviously, we have a course on thermodiet.com if you want to check it out. There's a lot of detail in it about all this information, but we'll scratch the surface a little bit here. You want to avoid things that are high in anti-nutrients. Anti-nutrients are typically chelators of some kind that hold a charge that is going to cause nutrient deficiencies in your body. There are medical reviews, scientific reviews talking about certain anti-nutrients and how these researchers actually believe that they are the potential single biggest cause of nutrient deficiencies in humans, which also is just completely logical. The minerals in your body hold a charge, and some of them just different charges, electric charges, and if you introduce it's just simple like ionic bonding and or magnetism, like think back to elementary school. The certain things are going to bind to the minerals in your body, and they'll make them inert, unusable in your body, and they end up being passed out through urine or defecation or whatever. And you don't really want that to happen, especially if you're dealing with a deficiency in that thing already. So one of the basics of Thermo is just to not consume things that are high in these anti-nutrients. And that, again, is just so foundational and basic and logical, but nobody teaches this stuff, and it's hard to find any sort of information on it in any formal nutrition or science setting. Usually when you learn about this stuff, it's in like chemistry class, right, or biology class, and it's never in the context of human nutrition. Therefore, you learn it and you're like, well, why does this even matter? I don't even have any context for why this is important. But when you think about it in the sense of the human body, it's totally logical. It makes a lot of sense. And it makes a lot of sense about why these anti-nutrients in certain foods would cause deficiencies in your body. Outside of even just other reasons for deficiencies, are you're not consuming enough of that vitamin or mineral or amino acid. And you potentially just can't assimilate it in your gut because you probably have a bad gut. And so when you start to realize these things, you start to see areas where you can just improve your health. It's kind of these high leverage areas of your body that you can help. Another thing is to consume foods that are high in the nutrients that you want,
right?
That are easy to digest and that promote gut health. What this comes down to is as one of my friends said when I was talking to him about thermo initially, fruits and roots. So we actually tend to say that vegetables are not necessary, and this requires a definition because a lot of people consider certain things as vegetables that really aren't. They're either fruits or tubers, i.e. roots. Like tomatoes is an easy one that people always say since you're a little kid. Like, is it a fruit or a vegetable? It's actually a fruit. But if you look at other stuff, there are a lot of things that people consider to be vegetables that are actually fruits. And when you look at the strict definition of a vegetable, it's really just something that's like leaves or stems. And these areas of a plant aren't meant to be eaten. They have a lot of native defense mechanisms against predators, against being eaten. And these kind of microtoxins that they release can be harmful on the body over time. And a lot of them, they cause damage to your thyroid. So they're known as goitrogens, and they hamper the iodine uptake in your thyroid gland. So people that eat large amounts of like cruciferous vegetables or leaves, they end up, especially raw, in a raw form, they end up having thyroid issues. And they don't even realize it because a lot of what our conventional wisdom says is just that this stuff's healthy for us. Same with beans. Yeah, a lot of things that people think are health foods are just totally not. They're not good for you.
And like the definition of a fruit is basically anything that grows from a flower and has seeds, isn't it? Yeah.
So
like bell peppers, for instance.
Yeah, bell pepper's a fruit.
Those are fruit?
Yep.
Cucumber?
Snap peas are also a fruit.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
But they're different than peas. So there's a lot of like language issues with this stuff, the way people are defining things. But yeah, and the interesting thing is like your body typically can't digest the seeds. And so you end up pooping them out, which is a really interesting, like from an evolutionary view.
It's ideal.
Yeah. The fruit is kind of designed for that. If like say you have an apple on a tree, right? The apple will sit on the tree until it is overripe and falls off, or until an animal comes by and grabs it and eats it. The animal could eat the entire apple but won't be able to digest the seeds, and the seeds will get pooped right out and will become, will essentially get planted again in the ground, and that apple tree will grow, and that's how it germinates and spreads.
Right.
So it's pretty brilliant.
Yeah. With a little bit of fertilizer there for it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless it's like covered in McDonald's or something.
Yeah. And then another big one is meat, right? Because people don't realize how many micronutrients are in like good grass-fed quality meat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, meat is one, if you look in the course, it's one of the things that we label as an unsafe food. There's certain things, and it's really only unsafe because that's like kind of a name for a class of certain things that you need to pay close attention to the quality of. And so it's not like it's unsafe to eat meat. It's just that it's unsafe to assume that all meat is the same.
Right.
And what you want, especially with meat and dairy products, is you got to go for the quality. So beef, for example, it's ideal to get grass-fed and if you can, grass-finished beef. And same with dairy from like cows or goats or whatever, ruminant animals. You got to go for the quality. And luckily right now, I mean, if you would have looked at 10 years ago, it was really difficult to find this stuff outside of going directly to a farmer. But right now it's actually super easy. You can go to a neighborhood grocery store, and like we were talking, there's just a pretty average big chain out here in Colorado of a grocery store. It's a Kroger chain, and they sell grass-fed, grass-finished beef for $5.99 a pound. It tastes great. It's from a local Colorado source, and it is inexpensive. I mean, you're not paying $3 a pound, but this is where the unsafe thing comes in. I wouldn't eat beef that costs $3 a pound.
Yeah.
It's nasty. Like it's pumped full of different hormones, and it's heavily full of antibiotics as well. So you're not going to get a lot of the stuff that you'd want, and you're going to get a lot of things that you really don't want in that meat. Same with dairy. That like a lot of dairy, if you get low quality dairy, the cows are actually artificially kept in lactation through the use of estrogen therapy. So they use estrogen on these cows, so they lactate more, so they create more milk, and therefore you can make more cheese or butter or whatever. So it's also very important that you need to get quality in those items as well.
Yeah, they do that with the meat as well. They keep them full of estrogen because the farmers, especially commercially, they get paid by the pound with these animals. And so if these animals have a whole bunch of water retention from all that estrogen that they're taking in, then they're going to weigh more. The farmer's going to get paid more for that cow.
Yeah,
it's
an economics issue.
Yeah.
Which I think eventually this stuff's going to be totally solved with but entrepreneurs have to come in and figure it out. And they have to figure out how to distribute higher quality meat at good prices to the average customer. And then a lot of consumers are going to start going toward that because everyone kind of innately knows, like, if I eat better quality meat, then I'll have a better result,
right?
Of better health. But most people just can't afford these really high quality meats. So luckily, like, this stuff's been transitioning, and eventually it'll, I think, open up so it's widely available. Another thing is with Thermo, just to understand, is something we call 80-20 Thermo. So my intention with Thermo is not to create like a diet cult where you have these like just overzealous, insane people that if you look around in any sort of fad diet out there, there are very proselytizing.
They're orthorexic.
Yeah, orthorexia, like that sort of like overly obsessed with it. I don't want to create that with Thermo. Thermo's, the intention is just to help people have better health. So I recognize that there's really a spectrum of an approach to this, and that's where the 80-20 Thermo comes in. And we can go into more detail over future episodes about what it is, but it's essentially just like being smart about the food, so that, say you're in, because again, back to the law of compensation, I don't really want people to feel like they are on a wagon that they can fall off of, you know, because people always say I fell off the wagon, and then what they do is they go binge on like Dunkin' Donuts and stuff when they couldn't, you know, find their perfect keto food or vegan food or whatever they were looking for that was like really extreme. They will go to the opposite end of the spectrum. I want people to feel more balanced in their approach. So 80-20 Thermo is something like, just one example of it is, if you can't find grass-fed or grass-finished beef, organic meats, whatever, at any one moment throughout maybe you're traveling, maybe you're on a road trip or something, to look for and be smart about the meat that you're going to eat by getting meat with very, very low amount of fat, because the estrogen is going to be stored in the fat.
Right, and the growth hormones and everything else.
Yeah, all the treatments are literally stored in the fat tissue of that beef. So if you can get a very lean beef, you know, like 98, 99% lean beef, then you're better off than if you were not eating that.
Right.
Or if you just felt like you fell off the wagon and had to go binge on something completely not Thermo at all. Another thing is polyunsaturated fats. One of the biggest things that we should address in this episode is just avoiding polyunsaturated fats, especially added polyunsaturated fats. Unfortunately, most restaurants, at least in the US, use polyunsaturated fat laden cooking oils in the restaurants. So it makes it a little harder to eat out. However, there is it seems to be a wave of awareness coming around vegetable oils right now, at least on social media, which is good. I think it's going to, especially as the Thermo movement grows, we'll be able to influence a lot of that. Just get people in restaurants cooking with butter or coconut oil or avocado oil instead of using all these crappy vegetable oils.
Right.
And the food is also going to taste better.
Yeah. So why are these fats, these polyunsaturated fats, why are they less optimal than a saturated fat, for instance?
Yeah, basically just the way that they're structured, the bonds in the fat, they're easily denatured and will go rancid with light and heat. So if it's not already rancid by the time it enters your body, which is rare, usually it's already completely oxidized if they use it for cooking because of the heat of the cooking. But say it wasn't. By the time it actually enters your body's at 98 degrees, 98.6 ideally, right? Some people are a lot lower, which is something we could talk about too in a future episode.
Definitely.
But by the time it gets in there into your body, it's going to be rancid, just based on the heat of your body.
Right.
So you don't want to eat this rancid oil because the oxidized oil wreaks havoc on your system. It's basically, everyone knows like free radicals and antioxidants and kind of the juxtaposition of the two. And these oils are going to create a lot of free radical damage in the body. And they'll typically damage glands like your thyroid. And there's a lot of research on hormones related to PUFAs, and there's nothing good about PUFAs at all.
Yeah.
It's always going to bring your hormones in the wrong direction.
Another big one is like fish oil. So many people think that fish oil is really good, but it's pure polyunsaturated fat. And during the actual manufacturing process, they expose this to heat to seal the capsules.
Yeah.
So it's already oxidized inside the capsule, and then it's going to automatically oxidize whenever it enters the heat of the body.
Yeah, it's nearly impossible to have a fish oil that's not already rancid by the time it is manufactured. I think the ideal way to eat a fish would be as a very cold water fish if it was actually like a raw cold water fish, or which there's also problems with them because of heavy metal toxicity, which is another thing. This, like I said, it's like this constant thing you got to figure out. Or you want warm water small fish, and because they actually tend to live longer because they have far lower concentrations of polyunsaturated fats in their body, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Like the orange roughy lives 100 years or something.
Yeah. And it has like one of the lowest amounts of polyunsaturated fats in it.
Yeah. And then ideally though, it'd be like shellfish. Shellfish are better, things like oysters. They're also extremely high in minerals that a lot of people need, that we're deficient in. Very easy to digest them as well. And they're fun to eat.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Shrimp, have a good shrimp boil.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. But so what kind of saturated fats are going to be the best then? And why are they better than the polyunsaturated fats? So
the saturated fats are very difficult to make. It's very difficult to make them go rancid, especially with heat. The best types that we recommend are things like coconut oil and butter and animal fats in general from a good animal. Again, like qualifying that one. They're going to be much better. There's just like endless research on why they're better. One thing I would warn people is that like any sort of research talking about heart issues and heart disease, I think it's just propaganda.
It is.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. If you look at the backstory of why people think polyunsaturated fats, vegetable oils are healthy, it's just wild. And you start to realize how much corruption there is, especially with the American Heart Association and just like big business in general. Vegetable oils were a byproduct of the paint industry, I believe. And they just had a lot of leftover oil.
Yeah, so didn't they like take it out of the paint? So the manufacturers took it out of the paint, made it illegal to put in there. And so they had all of these farmers that were about to go out of business. And because of that,
because they had pressed cotton seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so they had to
press the oil out of the cotton seed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then so what happened was Procter and Gamble ended up creating products out of it.
Margarine, wasn't it?
Oh, it was Crisco first, I think.
Crisco, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah, and then margarine came along, and everyone remembers, anyone that's old enough right now remembers like the wave of, oh, margarine's so healthy, and you should eat margarine instead of butter, because it's lower in bad, evil saturated fat. So there's all this propaganda that is out there, and I would advise people to just kind of have an open mind. Some of the stuff that we might say on this podcast might seem a bit outlandish at first, but just have an open mind. We back up everything that we say with solid facts. You might not agree with everything we say, and that's fine. Have your own opinions. You should have the ability to actively accept or reject other people's thoughts.
Definitely.
And but what we're going to tell you and reveal over the course of this show is going to be hopefully very interesting and eye-opening for you, because there's a lot of backstory to a lot of why people believe what they believe, especially around health.
Yeah. And there's a couple things I want to touch on. So first, whenever you're looking at butter, a lot of the times, like what is it, the Crocker butter, the Betty Crocker butter, it's actually margarine. So you want to make sure that you get like good grass-fed butter that's actually from cows and doesn't have all that vegetable oil mixed in there.
Yeah.
And then another one, if you have kids, preferably young, so under probably double digits, or if you have access to kids that are under double digits, get like a really cheap ground beef and then get like a good high quality grass-fed beef, and don't tell them which one's which, and just see which one they prefer. And you can see right there that they'll naturally gravitate towards the better tasting beef.
Yeah. Well, grass-fed beef tastes a million times better than conventional beef. So highly recommend, if you can find like, cheap source, or if you can afford it, just buy it. It's way better. One thing people do that's wild is like they'll spend so much money on stuff that just has nothing to do with good health or actively destroys their health, but then they won't spend a couple extra bucks on some good eggs or some good beef.
Yeah, like they'll go out of the way to buy this fully organic, cold press extracted flaxseed. That's tearing them apart.
Yeah.
Yet they won't buy a $6 tub of grass-fed butter at the store.
That'll last, a month.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah.
Or you won't pay. The people complain about eggs, which is funny. So like, what's a normal conventional carton of eggs costs $3, and like good pasture-raised eggs costs $5, $6 maybe. It's like, it's only a couple dollars.
Well, and you can see that whenever you crack the egg open too. That's another experiment you can do. Like get a conventional egg and crack it, and then get like a nice pasture-raised egg and crack it next to it. And you'll notice that the yolk is a lot more dark and rich and almost orange in some cases, because it's a lot more nutrient dense.
And again, it tastes better.
It does.
That's one of the cool things about Thermo, is like once you're actually doing it, you realize that not only is it healthier for you, but all of your meals taste infinitely better than your old, quote, health food meals that you would eat. If people are eating like chicken breasts and broccoli and brown rice, that's another thing we can talk about. Rice.
My gosh.
So there's like, if you eat these like traditional healthy diets that everyone says are healthy, then you start eating Thermo, you're like, holy crap, there's so much flavor in this. There's so much satisfaction in what I'm eating. And that's why it just really, like I said in the beginning of this show, it just becomes a way that you live. You don't really want to do anything else.
Right.
You start feeling so good.
And I think one thing that's really awesome is looking forward to every single meal that you have. And I've noticed that with Thermo, is like I've gotten to a point where I look forward to every single meal that I'm going to have throughout the day.
I love having my Thermo Bowls.
Yes.
Thermo Bowls are like the big thing. That's probably, just for anyone who needs an introduction to Thermo right now, is that's something that we invented, that is the easy way to get a big hearty Thermo meal. You just take like a good starch, it might be some potatoes, like get some organic Yukon Golds, that's my favorite. Roast some potatoes, cook up grass-fed beef or some sort of meat, maybe you do shellfish or something like that. Get a big bowl, throw the potatoes in the bottom, mash them up, throw the meat in there, maybe take half an avocado or something, get a little hot sauce or whatever you want to do. One thing that Zach and I would do is make this Thermo glue. That's what we called it. We would take a scoop of collagen protein, the Umzu total collagen protein, and then we would mash up avocado in it, and then get some organic barbecue sauce with Thermo ingredients, mix it all together. It looks nasty, but it tastes incredible. And then we would put that on top of the Thermo bowl. And I tell you, when you eat a Thermo bowl with like the potatoes, the beef, and Thermo glue like that, you don't want to eat again for probably 12 hours because you're so full, and your body heats up, which is cool. It's one thing that happens when you're like really, in Thermo. After every time you eat, you start to almost sweat, and sometimes you do sweat.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild. I mean, the body heat is actually a really good indicator of health. That was unexpected, and it's just a cool thing that happens. And I know a lot of people in the Thermo community group say the same thing.
Yeah, I like to put the bone broth powder.
Bone broth's good too.
Whenever I do that,
Yeah, the Umzu bone broth has also 10 grams of collagen in it. It's got 18 grams of protein.
Yep.
Then some turmeric,
tomato powder,
salt, garlic,
Mm-hmm.
oregano, Tastes incredible. You can just drink it with water, or you can use it in your cooking. It's really good. So yeah, any other thermo basics that we should introduce before we
I don't think
this
so. I'm sure everything's overlapping, so if we didn't cover it in this one, we'll probably cover it in another one.
Yeah, there'll be more shows, so just listen to the next show.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, if you want to find out more information about the Thermo Diet, go over to thermodiet.com. There will be site there, information that you can find, testimonials from other people just like you that are doing it. And you can find out how to get the course if you want to do it. If you just want to know the basics, you don't want to pay for anything right now and just kind of dip your toe in the water, you just Google Thermo 30 Roadmap. And we can talk in the future about what Thermo 30 is.
Yeah, and we have a Facebook group that you can hop in on too called the Thermo Diet Community.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all kinds of people in there and just killing it.
Yep. A lot of helpful people. Everyone's cool.
Yeah. And then like we have our YouTube channels and our other social media accounts in the description below that you can check out too if you want to look at those.
Cool. All right. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Thermo Diet Thermo Podcast. My name's Chris.
And I'm the Research Cowboy.
And we're signing off. Subscribe to the show. We'll see you on the next episode.
Have a good one.